Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Do you hear me? Do you hear us now?
I hear you, yes. Sorry.
Okay, so I think that we can start because we have all project partners on board. So we have all clusters that are engaged in the Extra Light project. We have also a couple of companies from the lighting sector from Luce and Veneto. In any case, the webinar will be recorded, so afterwards we will disseminate it and we will share it with all our members and all the companies that are interested in the government procurement in Japan. So I will say to start, so welcome you all today. Today we'll have the first training webinar on public procurement features and characteristics in Japan with support of the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation. The training will be composed of 3 webinars that will specify and deep dive into the public government procurement in Japan. And today we will start with the general features just to, let's say, have a first insight. And then we will proceed with specific procedures, eligibility assessment, and legal issues. And at the end, we'll let's say focus on the public sector lighting market and building how to build the partnerships to participate in the public tendering. Our expert from the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, in particular for the public procurement help desk, is Mr. Like Grieg. That I will leave him the floor immediately after my very short presentation. Only some short rules for this today webinar. So you see that we are in the meeting mode and not in the webinar mode. So you are free to ask questions and also ask for some additional explanations, but please wait at the end. We will have the question and answer sessions, and you are also invited to use the chat. So in the chat, you can write the questions through the whole webinar duration. If you would like to ask questions directly, please raise your hands, and we'll do it in the last 10-15 minutes when we'll open the question time. So thank you very much for all of you for being here, and I leave the floor to Lika.
Hello, good morning. I'll switch the screen. Okay, I hope you are able to hear me properly.
Yes, you can.
Good, thank you for the introduction. My name is Like Grieg, and I manage the Japan Tax and Public Procurement Help Desk at the EU-Japan Center. Well, I'm glad for. Thank you for your invitation, and I hope hopefully in the coming 3 sessions that we'll be able to enlighten you a bit about how government procurement works in Japan and what the market looks like. The first 2 sessions I will. As was already explained briefly, we'll do it in 3 modules. Today we'll talk about general features of the market, so you get an idea what's it about. Next week, on Tuesday, we'll dive in a bit more into procedures and things like what you need to do for eligibility, what kind of assessment that they are using in Japan, things like standards and other legal issues that you might encounter. Then the last module that we're going to do in January will be a bit different. There I will be joined by 2 of my colleagues from the European Enterprise Network, and they are also going to share their experience with building partnerships, because that's what they do. And I will look then at that session, again, try to give an overview of the public sector lighting market, so which is relevant specifically for companies in the cluster that you represent. So today's module, the general features of government procurement and the market is we're going to look at some distinctions that you need to keep in mind when you deal with government with government organizations. The types of public procurement procedures that are being used, because there are different ways that government organizations can purchase the goods and services that they need to perform their tasks. Then an important one, of course, well, how do we find information about tender opportunities? So we're going to look into that. Then we'll look more specifically at the tender notice, what kind of information is presented and what you can do with it or what you need to do with it. And I'll end up with a first assessment of challenges that foreign suppliers will encounter when they enter the market. Also, during my talk, I will use the chat box also to give you some links where you can have a look at as well. Okay. Well, I hope this is clear. Then let's proceed. Let's first look at some terms to keep in mind. We're talking about a country that I assume most of you are not familiar with, and it has also quite a distinct language. It has well, relatively few things in common with the European languages that we speak here in Europe. So some terms that might be important to keep in mind. If we talk about government procurement, it's called Seifu Chotatsu. So I also put the Chinese characters in it. So you might want to copy it and then use the Google features and to find some information on it. An alternative term is public procurement. And that's called Kokyo Chotatsu. There's a slight nuance between government procurement and public procurement. Government procurement is, of course, not all procurement that is done by the government is public because it's sensitive, for example. So, well, it's still government procurement. Then a term that you might want to, and you might want to keep in mind as well, is called Yusatsu Joho. That's usually the term that's being used on websites by government entities when they provide you with information about contracts and opportunities they have on offer. And and that's usually also in combination with the other word keiyaku, which is contracting. Yeah? So a short Japanese language lesson. Okay, well, let's look at the government procurement market. Some distinctions that you should keep in mind if you are entering a government procurement market in a different country. Well, the first distinction is that there are WTO regulated tenders, so internationally regulated tenders, and domestic tenders. Both Japan and the EU have joined the agreement on government procurement, or the GPA as it's usually called. And they're both signees and members of it, and in there they have agreed upon that they would give each other's companies equal access and the same treatment for tenders that are above a certain threshold, a certain size. So you're probably also aware of the European variant of this. Well, in terms of value, because it primarily deals with larger contracts, in terms of value, it's being said that it's 35% of the total amount of money that is being used for procurement in Japan. Well, what does the international rules, in theory, it's not in practice, please keep that in mind, in theory, give you is that you get equal treatment as your Japanese peers. There are longer lead times, so you get more weeks to prepare, longer time to prepare a bid and prepare the documentation that is necessary. What Japan does as well is provide English summaries. We'll see some examples of them as well, and they will probably also be your major source of information when looking at opportunities in the Japanese government procurement market. But also you should keep in mind that some organizations are not all organizations are covered by the WTO. For example, things like having to do with projects overseas paid for by the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, in third world countries. Those contracts are usually not open on an equal footing as Japanese companies. And of course, also, if we talk about very sensitive things like defense, there are usually restrictions for foreign companies in terms of participation. And the same goes for some products and services. Not all products and services are included in this agreement. Again, think about things like defense and other sensitive areas where countries rather do not have to deal with foreign companies because of national security. And then on the other side of the spectrum, on the other side of the coin, are domestic tenders. So and they are usually, in most cases, smaller, and also projects that are outside of the framework of WTO. There are local rules, and that can also mean there are restrictions. Think about very concrete things like local government, cities or towns. They can demand in their tenders that the company that is awarded the contract has its main office within the city or the town. Those kinds of rules. In order to protect local economies, etc. And those are local rules that you can think about. Also, short lead times, because they don't want to waste too much time on purchasing very basic things. So in many cases, a notice is put up on the board somewhere in the city hall, and then after a week, within a week, you have to submit an invoice or a quote, and then after a week they'll decide who gets the contract. And there, of course, everything will be in Japanese language only, everything. So no English whatsoever. Then another distinction. There are, because the distinction between internationally regulated tenders and domestic regulated tenders are made upon the basis of thresholds. So the expected value of a contract. So, and these are international arrangements. And of course, in the euro rates it varies, but at present estimates it will be for goods and services. It will be 120,000 euros. So if it's to supply a government entity goods and services, it's about 120,000 euros. So larger than 120,000 euros, it will be it will have to be internationally regulated. Then also keep in mind that there's a clear distinction between the supply of goods and services and everything that has to do with construction of public works. So and for construction of public buildings, etc. Related to that, the threshold is much higher. So 5.4 million, about at the current rates, might be a bit higher nowadays. As you can imagine, the number of contracts that are offered under international rules are much lower because of the higher thresholds. And another distinction that you have to also keep in mind is the level of government that you deal with. So if you deal with central government agencies such as ministries or agencies that are attached to the ministries, also agencies that are funded by the national government, and also a number of government corporations. They are listed in the WTO agreement Annex 3. Think here of organizations like Tokyo Metro or Japan Railway in Hokkaido and Shikoku, which are still publicly owned, and a large number of other organizations that are covered by WTO and need to conduct their procurement according to those rules. So that's the central government, and the thresholds at this level are the lowest. So the ones that you see here are the lowest. Then if we go one level below that, we get sub-central government entities. And in the case of Japan, this includes the 47 prefectures. Japan is divided into 47 prefectures, and they of course also will have local offices and agencies, and also a number of organizations that fall under the jurisdiction of prefectures. And then there is a number of designated cities, and that includes Tokyo. So, and of course, you have to keep in. I always tell everybody when we talk about the Japanese market, keep in mind that almost close to a third of the Japanese, they live in Greater Tokyo, 31 million, right? So that's larger than many of European countries in terms of population, and therefore makes it is a large government. If we call it an entity, it's a large government entity and it represents a huge market. The thing is only that Tokyo and the prefectures, they work with higher thresholds, so the amount of internationally regulated tenders is of course substantially lower than will be lower than at the central government level. So, and as you can see, this is quite for public works construction, it is quite substantially higher in terms of the threshold, and also for goods and services on the left, the threshold is double the amount of central government entities. So those are sub-central government organizations. And the 19 designated cities, including Tokyo. Well, Tokyo is very large, but they are, in principle, they are cities that are larger than they have a population that is larger than 500,000 people. Yeah.
So excuse me, Tokyo has the
Yes.
same situation then. Tokyo has the same organization as the other cities, or different
in terms of administrative divisions, they are more or less the same. Yes. So they have a metropolitan government, the Tokyo metropolitan government. Of course, the scale is much larger because Tokyo is so much larger than all the other major cities like Osaka or Kyoto. So in a sense, Tokyo is a bit in a class of its own, I would say. Yeah. So, and then what remains is local government, and well, local government, they are mostly smaller towns and cities, and they have nothing to do with international agreements such as WTO. So they can basically, they only need to follow domestic Japanese rules and regulations when they make their procurement. And yeah, of course, for foreign suppliers, that is very difficult to grasp what is going on in those organizations. Well, then we've had a change since for Europe. There has been a change since February 2019, when the European Union and Japan concluded the Economic Partnership Agreement, or EPA. And in that EPA, government procurement was also included, and because both parties agreed that they would each other's companies additional access to the government procurement market, so access to win government contracts in both in Japan and in EU countries. So and in the agreement, the EPA basically builds upon the WTO. So the basic framework is the WTO, and then on top of that, they have increased the scope, so more organizations where European companies are eligible to participate on an equal footing. And so at the national level, a few additional national agencies and government corporations. At the sub-central government level, there are a number of organizations that are under the jurisdiction of prefectures and designated cities were added, and then an additional designated city and 54 core cities were also added. The only thing is that the core cities, they don't need to publish any information in English. So it's very difficult to find any concrete leads there. And also they don't need to tell explicitly in many cases whether a tender is covered by the EPA or not. And it's a bit of a gray area of which we have been working with the European Commission to get that a bit more clearer, and that government or agencies, they are a bit more clear about what are opportunities for European companies. And then also some procurement related to production, transport, and distribution of electricity was also added. So that means additional opportunities for European companies that, for example, other countries, companies located in other countries will not have. Okay, so that was a bit of the distinctions that you can make within the market. Then let's move on to what kind of procedures that you see in Japan. I've listed them here from the most common type that we see to the most rare, and they are in the color blue. Because they are, here we talk about WTO EPA regulated tender procedures. So there the open competitive procedures, or Ippan Kyoso Nyusatsu as it's called in Japanese, are most common. They are followed in terms of the number that we see each year, that the larger contracts by single tender procedures. So they're called Zui Keiyaku. And in many cases, they are single tender procedures are procedures where under the WTO framework, they have agreed that in certain cases, a government entity can choose to conduct a single tender procedure. So without any competition, they'll appoint a supplier and award the contract to that specific company. So you take a single tender procedure. And for example, it's quite common in ICT related procurement, because compatibility is usually an issue. A company like Microsoft or Amazon Cloud Services, they have built a system and they have supplied it to a government entity, and then it needs to be renewed, the contract, and there they can use a single tender procedures. Or for example, if it involves buying a work of art, they can also choose to use this procedure. So, but in principle, of course, most of the tenders need to be competitive, because that's in theory that will get is the most fairest way of giving companies an equal opportunity to win a contract, and also for the taxpayer, of course, if you have a competitive procedure, it will have a beneficial effect on the price and cost of certain services and goods that are being procured. And then all the way to the right, there we have designated or selective tender procedures. So that's Shimei Kyoso Nyusatsu. Under WTO, we hardly see it anymore. There, the government entity will choose a number of suppliers and then let them compete among each other for a contract. Then, if we look at the domestic side, however, there we see that designated and selective tender procedures, Shimei Kyoso Nyusatsu, are much more common still. It used to be in the past that also for WTO that was very common, but the Japanese government, faced with a particular American criticism, has attempted to go to open competitive procedures, but in the domestic sphere, it's still a lot of designated and selective tenders where a government organization has a list of suppliers, and they will select a number of suppliers from that list, and then among them let them compete or select a designated one, although that is a bit less. Yeah, then so what I said thus far are mostly for contracts that are larger in size, so 100,000 euros or more, and for domestic 50,000 euros or more. There is also procedures, small amount procedures, of course, because a government organization does not always buy everything in lots of 100,000 euros. So there are also procedures in place for small amount procurement, and that's in Japan usually called open counter. It's also, the English term is used, open counter. So, which is usually invoice based and very simple, where a local government agency will put up a notice and have a box there, and local suppliers, usually local suppliers will put in an invoice or a quotation, and then the lowest price will win it. So that's open counter small amount procurement. Then there are also some variations in terms of procedures. One of them is public offerings, Koboke. So where basically an announcement is being made, and interested suppliers can express their interest, and then there's usually an assessment taking place, a plan assessment, where and after that a competition in terms of, sometimes it's based on the plan itself, and in many cases it's a combination of price and the quality of the plan that is being done. And a variation of that as well are plan competitions, or proposal hoshiki as it's being called. Then let's move on to where do I find the information about opportunities? And as I said already, in English, the primary source of information will be the English language notices that are stipulated by WTO and the EPA. And what the Japanese government does is provide summaries of notices. I'm going to give you a link now in the chat box where you can look it up yourself. There's a list of there's a list on our website with that lists all kinds of tender portals, and the main one is the one that is being hosted by the Japan External Trade Organization. They support and promote trade. So for your cluster in a different capacity, JETRO might also be an interesting organization to talk to. But one of their responsibilities is well to maintain the Japanese government procurement database. And in the EPA, the JETRO website is regarded as the single point of entry that both parties have agreed upon, that just like in Europe we have TED, so this is basically the Japanese equivalent of TED. But of course, this is not limited for uses by European suppliers. This is used by suppliers from other countries as well. So if you have two screens or you have a large screen, you can now look at the Japanese at the JETRO website. This is we'll have a further look at JETRO later on. Then there is another website. It's hosted by the center that I work for. However, it is actually run by the Ministry of the Economy, Trade and Industry in Japan, METI. So there's no direct involvement by the center. This is a this is an attempt by the Japanese government to provide information in English on public procurement that is not regulated by international agreements. What it basically does is it crawls through the web, and it automatically translates information that has everything to do with government contracting and procurement. Have a look at it, but as you will see, the quality of the information provided is rather difficult because of the quality of the translations, and it is still very difficult for a foreigner, non-speaking Japanese person to make any sense out of it and see whether there is a concrete business case available. But have a look at it, and then we have another one which we'll also have a look at if we have time today for. It's called Chotatsu Portal. It is primarily for Japanese. Of course, please keep in mind that all these pages also have a Japanese equivalent, which is usually much richer in information than the English version is. The Chotatsu Portal is for the national government only, so ministries and attached agencies. And they are required to post their contracts there, and both internationally regulated as also larger contracts that are not internationally regulated. But as you will see, the English side of this page will only have, of course, WTO regulated tenders, because that's the only source of English language information. But what is beneficial for this side is that it gives you easier access to further details about a tender. And then there are the official notices. That's the government gazette, which every country has. European countries also have a government gazette for official notifications. They also have a website and a section on procurement with announcements for government procurement contracts. The only thing is that the interface is largely in Japanese, so you need to find with Google the section on government procurement, and there you will have the official notice with a small English summary. So and then yes.
Sorry, Like, just one question for the JETRO portal. Does it provide only the, let's say, brief description, what is the procurement about, or it's also the possibility to download the documentation?
Not directly, but we'll go into more detail on JETRO after this. So no, it requires some work to get more details out of JETRO, but it's a start, regarded as your starting point, basically. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Then, well, at the subcentral level, Tokyo Metropolitan Government provides some summary, also some summaries, brief information, which is basically the same as what you find on JETRO. It's a copy of what you find on JETRO, but they have a few lines, as you can see here in the screen grab, where they say for their WTO regulated tenders that they have some information in English, but it's very brief. And then there are a very small, really, you can count them on one hand. I could only think of two at the moment, where they provide tender information in English. That is the Tokyo Metro, which is the operator of Tokyo's subway system, and NTT, which is the former national telecommunications organization that also provides some information in English. And that's it. So then some look at the other side, of course. The Japanese language information that is available on tender opportunities is, of course, immense. So, and most of it will be posted at the government entity level. So there are thousands of websites and and online tender information portals in the country for each of the individual companies. And if we talk about ministries, of course, large government organization, they will also have pages at the department or at the agency level. Then, of course, there are joint platforms like the one we've already saw, the Chotatsu portal, for example, that has has also a Japanese equivalent completely, and also includes online tendering as well. And prefectures have similar at prefecture level, they have similar platforms, and where prefectures and often the municipalities within the prefecture share a platform where they provide information about the contracts on offer. Of course, because the information is so scattered all around the country, there are some commercial services that have jumped into that void, and are offering services that brings the information together. So meta sites gathering notices. One that we have worked with in the past is NJSS, and it's basically what they do is they have people working for them, and they monitor those thousands of web pages and then enter it into a database, and then people can that use their service then pay for it to find on the basis of keywords contract opportunities all around the country. And it's a very handy service. The only thing, it's quite costly. I think they charge about 2,000-3,000 a month nowadays. So it's quite costly. And also you have some sector specific websites like Construction Daily, where they offer it for construction on its own. I think I need to speed up a bit. So then let's look a bit closer at the JETRO website. If you, I'll give you the, if you haven't found it yet, I'll give you the URL in the chat. What do you have there? The information that is provided there. There you can search for notices for contracts that are regulated by WTO and EPA. And they offer different types, as you can see in the screen grab here. It's divided between national government and local government, and local government is then sub-central government, as I explained before in one of the previous slides. And there you can look at there are various types of notices. So for goods and services, I'll look at that at the next slide, and you can also search for on specific categories and see if there's anything there. So well, types of notices that you find there, most are goods and services. You will have about 100 to 150 a week that are listed there. I managed to find a recent one that has something with lightning. I don't know if one of the companies in your cluster will be able to do something with it. So this is a recent notice found on JETRO for that where goods and services are required. So and this is a national university in Osaka. Well, selective tenders, as I said, they are almost non-existent. So I don't have a recent example. Then they have a special category for tenders that require construction. So this is a national government organization. So this will be a contract that is larger than 5.5 million. And here it's road lightning facilities. I don't know if that's also relevant for your cluster, but this is regarded as construction services. And this is by one of the operators of national highways in Japan and then in the middle of the country. public offering proposals, I explained that as well, which is basically a kind of competition with plans, and it's often used for technical services that are related to agriculture, to architecture and engineering. So in this case, they want to have a bridge reinforced for earthquakes, and this is done by also by a road company. Then single tenders, I explained that already earlier. Well, this is, for example, waste disposal is a very highly specialized kind of work where there are few providers of that service that can legally do this. So it's done in a single tender. We also see a lot of foreign companies, by the way, in single tender procedures as well. For example, providers of academic databases is something you see very often. Then something that is also interesting because it gives suppliers a longer period of time to prepare is where there is a call for submission of materials. And unfortunately, there aren't that Japanese government entities are not using this tool a lot in the international setting, but it's basically a step before the specifications are drafted and the actual tender is taking place. They want to have information from the market. A step afterward are requests for comments, and where specifications already have been drafted, but they want to have input from the market in order to perhaps change it and make them feasible for the market. And then there's another notice, that's what you usually see in the beginning of the fiscal year, so that will be April, May, is future procurement plans where government organizations will basically announce their plans for the coming year in what kinds of large contracts they are planning to put on the market. So you can prepare for that as well. So those are types of notices. Then, well, look a bit closer at the tender on stage lighting and the notice itself. So what this is basically a pretty standard summary of English information on a contract on offer by Japanese government organizations. This is the English summary. This will be, in most cases, your only English information that you will have. There won't be anything else. And that is also one of the challenges in Japan is of course the language barrier and how to determine whether there is a business case for you, because you will need to find details on this. And well, in most cases, it depends. It goes both ways. You have organizations that absolutely put the absolute minimum in it, and you have organizations that have provide more information and also email access and those kind of things. Well, this is something that's a bit in between. Everything that is legally required is there. Well, if we go just briefly through it, because we're already at 11:15. Well, number one, that's not really relevant. That's just the name of an official. Two is the classification of the products procured. So that's what you also use to search for certain contracts that are relevant. Then the nature and the quantity of the products that are procured, that's basically what they want, right? And on the basis of that, you need to find out, like, okay, this is something we need to put some time in and see if we can find more information. Important thing as well, delivery period. So this organization, the University of Osaka, wants to have the stage lighting set ready by the 29th of September next year. And the place where they want to have it is the university's Nakanoshima Art Center. Well, then we get to qualifications and for participation. Well, usually they don't list everything. Here the most important ones. So that's what at least you need to meet before you're allowed to join the competition. So, and that's where many companies already are running into difficulties because they cannot meet the requirements. And it's also one of the difficult aspects of procurement in Japan. well, the A, it says under Article 7 or 8 of a regulation at the university, usually has to do with the financial health of the company, that you're not under bankruptcy. So it's pretty standard. The B one have a grade A, B, and C qualification for the sales of product in kinky area is something of a, or you need a qualification at the university itself. We'll talk about that in more detail in the next session, like how you can get this qualification. But basically, this qualification is used to separate large companies from the small companies. So if you're an A company, you're a very large company. It goes to D, and D is for smaller companies. So D companies, smaller companies are not allowed to participate here. But we'll talk about it in more detail next time. Then C, and that's another challenge for European suppliers that are entering the market, is that you have to have a system prepared that you can provide rapid after-sales service and maintenance for the procured products. And in this case as well, they require you to have at least have a service point available within Japan, and that's a challenge sometimes as well. Well, then the time limit for tender, because it's WTO regulated. As you can see above, they give you about 2 months, 7 weeks, and you need them in most cases, and you will need them because government procurement is a lot of paperwork. Then, of course, contact point of the notice, which is a lady called Miss Kitanohashi at the Department of Finance, the contract division. And then something on environmental conditions, which is very particular for universities. But usually not a deal breaker. Then, so that's basically the information in most cases what you get with variation. But if you look in the JETRO website at various notices, you will notice the difference quite quickly. Then we look at the Japanese version, which is longer. There in the Japanese notice, they will explain you what kind of type of tender it is. In this case, it's an open competitive tender. They also explain you how to get the specifications and how the winning bidder is being decided. So here it's lowest price. Lowest price is still a very common way of deciding a winning supplier in contracts, unfortunately. And then, so the deadline when you need to submit qualification documents. And keep in mind, we saw before that in the bidding, the deadline for bids was at the end of next month, but often the deadline for submission of qualification is much earlier, 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So that's why it's always on the pressure cooker in terms of time. And then time allocation of bid opening, language used is usually Japanese. And whether a deposit is needed and whether a contract is drafted, in this case, yes, and whether negotiations are permitted after the decision has been made. No, there is no negotiation here if you promise what you deliver. So the challenge then is for a foreign supplier, for a company in your cluster, is how do I get further details to determine whether I have a business case? Well, the option one is to call them. But it will have to be in Japanese. It often says, well, you have to, only inquiries in Japanese are accepted. So you have to call them. So find somebody that speaks Japanese and give them a call in office hours, of course. And time is of essence in procurement. So in government procurement. So yeah, it's often loss of valuable time. Or option two is check whether the details are available online. So I contacted Kitanohashi-san, and she was very kind to send me a set of information with tender details the next day, and then you get a zip file, a compressed file with various documentations, including the specification. So the screenshot you see here is the specification of this particular tender. So for the stage lighting set at Osaka University. And well, what kind of documentation will you find there? Well, first one is the first two ones are the most important one. The tender explanations, it's so-called Nysatsesitsemeisho, will explain you the whole procedure, everything you need to keep in mind with the procedure, and also the conditions, etc. And the other things are, of course, the technical side of it, what kind of product or service is being required, and they are listed in the specifications. Well, then the other things are a number of standard documents. If you use a representative, you have to submit a letter of attorney. There's usually a standard document to write down your bid. They will also give you some guidelines, like how you present the information that you need to bring, the technical specifications. It will have a draft contract with all the legal requirements in it. And then also a list of documents that bidders need to submit, and also a legal document like what that regulates the procurement by that specific entity. Well, here's another screenshot. Is basically what they need. They need spotlight, 32 spotlights of two different types, 32 each, and then a DMX system. So so that's the kind of information you will have then in the specification. I will send you a link where you can download this set of information afterwards. I don't have it available here at the moment. Although I can send you the link to the specific.
The documents are free of charge, right? So
yes, not always.
Okay.
If they want to charge you, then they it will usually be in the Japanese notice. So I know that, for example, railway companies usually if they will charge you for it, and depending on the size of the contract, really. And also, like in this case, I had the email address of this lady from previous, because we maintain a database, and she was very well forthcoming in sending me the documentation. But it still happens a lot, like where they say, well, you have to come in person to pick it up. They're still there, or we can only send it by fax. I don't know how many of your offices still have a fax. I haven't used a fax in years, but in Japan they still have a love affair with it. So yeah, that's the it's very diverse. So, but in this case, the lady was very forthcoming, and also said, well, because I said like I was going to use it for the training for lighting companies, and she said like, well, they're most welcome to place a bid. So.
But then the information is, of course, given. So you have spoken in Japanese, right?
Yes. Like in this case as well. You will everything will be in Japanese. The language used in the procedure.
So if any European company would like to contact the contact point, must find somebody who can support them in Japanese language.
Yes.
Everything is Japanese.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So then, do I still have? It's already close to 11. Do I have some time to
please
to talk longer?
Yes.
Okay. No. So to continue with finding tender information, well, in this case, we contacted the contact person directly. There are also, of course, it's large entities, such government organizations, such as Tokyo Metropolitan Government, or the common site where you can download it, where you have to download it yourself. So if you contact them, they will give you an address. And so let me see if I can switch to a different. How do I do that? So I'm just going to stop the share, and then I'm going to pick another one. Sorry. Okay. You should now be able to see the page with
Yes, yes, we can see
notices.
it.
So yeah, you can see this. So let me go to this is for example, this is all in Japanese. Only here, as I said earlier, this is the only English that they have. So if you click, oh, I get an error. See if I can. That happens a lot as well. Yes. That's not going to happen today. So I'm going to go to this one, the Chotatsu portal one. So they have an English one as well. Here I've used the English side. Well, I put in the search conditions, and I put in the keyword light, the name of the procurement. And well, there was one in October, and there you can. This is still in English. Let's see if it works. But sometimes, oh, I've got a timer. One second. To do it again. So I put in the keyword light. And well, here you have a tender by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, located in Osaka, where they put up a notice in October, in the middle of October. And here, well, they don't say anything here, so there must be but there's a link there where you can download it. Let's see if that works. Still, might not be working because it's a while ago. But then you're going into a Japanese interface already again. So that's where you need to be creative with Google. What you need, well, of course, I do this quite a lot. So where you have to submit your contact addresses or an email address, because they want to know who have downloaded it, which makes sense. And then let's see if this still works. So, and this is basically the information that is presented here concerns this particular contract for those light bulbs that we saw before. These ones, this one, the 126 light bulbs. And then if you press this button, you can download the information, and it's coming to you by zip file. But it's all in Japanese. So here you can use certain, if they have those systems, you can use online procurement info systems to get specifications yourself, so you don't need to call first and save time. But yeah, the thing is, you need to figure out how those sites work. Then I'll need to switch again to the presentation. Yep, are we back? So that's basically also close to my last slide for today. So I think what you need, perhaps, because this is a training, play a bit with it if you have time this week, and see if you can if you were able to find information that is relevant to you on the pages that I've introduced to you. So I've listed already, there are more challenges ahead, of course, but I've listed on the basis of my talk for today, some of the challenges that foreign suppliers will have at an entry phase. And well, the most important one, I've already mentioned it, is of course the language barrier, because you need to have some access to Japanese language in order to determine whether there is a business case. And yeah, much of the work that we do at the help desk is also to assist companies with help in this and in determining whether they have a business case, because the English language information that is provided is usually very is quite limited, and yeah, access to more details is you need Japanese language capabilities in order to get that in an efficient way. Of course, later on during the process, when you prepare for a procedure, there will be the burden of translations, because the Japanese government entity that wants to procure something wants everything in Japanese. So if you have an Italian or a French or a Spanish specifications about your product, you will need to provide a Japanese translation with it. That's already one thing that you need to do. So that and that's also, well, we spoke in the preparations for this. I understand that you will also be coming to Japan on a mission, and one of the things that you need to have available is Japanese information in Japanese, not even English, in Japanese, that will make translations of your products and in Japanese, and preferably with some technical information there as well. So, but in the procedure, yeah, if you are preparing a bid for a contract like the one that we saw with for the stage light, you will have to provide those documents, technical documents as well, in Japanese, and that's quite a challenge. And in particular, in the beginning, if you're doing it for the first time, it takes a lot of that. What we see as well, and it's also what we advise to companies. Like, the chances are very low that you win in the first go, but you have to try it a number of times and get have a system in place and get more experienced. Then your chances will increase as well. So, but yeah, in particular, translations and first translate everything from Japanese in order for you to understand it, for your engineers to understand it, then prepare the documentation for the Japanese side to understand it. That takes up is a substantial burden for you if you want to do it yourself without a Japanese partner. Lead times, we've spoke about it. Well, internationally regulated ones have 7 weeks, about 7 weeks, but in many cases, because they want to determine at a much earlier stage, at the stage of expression of interest, whether a company is eligible. So usually the lead times are much shorter. A perfect example is Tokyo Metropolitan Government. They say in their notices that the deadline for bidding is 2 months away, but in most cases the expressions of interest and the eligibility documents need to be in about 3 weeks, and that's not written down in the English notice. So another thing, and we'll probably will also talk about it in the next session, is the focus on lowest price. Yeah, in the majority of procurement in Japan is still on the basis of lowest price. So, and that's also usually a disadvantage for European companies, for foreign suppliers. If they have to compete on price, that's usually difficult to do, because you'd rather have a procedure where it's a combination of the overall value of the product and the service that's being offered together with the price. Then you have a better chance as a European company to win. Then, yeah, the service requirements, as I said, like Japanese customers in general are very demanding. If companies have already done business with Japan, they expect a lot in terms of after sales, and it always, and they expect mostly it to be free. So, which also you need to take into account when you place your bid. In this particular contract that I highlighted today, yeah, they also said, like, we want you to prove that you have a service point in Japan that they can call, preferably, or send a fax or an email, and they basically want you to fix a light within 48 hours or 24 hours. So those are things that for SMEs from Europe are difficult to, in particular in the entry phase, are difficult to realize without having a partner back in Japan. Then last thing that also perhaps you saw it already a bit is the geographic focus. please keep in mind that most of the contracts are awarded to companies that are located in the vicinity of the organization that is buying it. In most cases, like I wouldn't be surprised that this particular contract for the stage light goes to a company in Osaka, because they are close and they probably also have good knowledge of the market there and also what they need. And the way it's being structured as well, it's often, although in WTO EPA regulated tenders it should not be an issue, but the way it's organized, it's very locally organized, local companies. That's why large Japanese companies have offices all around the country. The larger companies, they have, and mid-sized companies as well, they have at least 5 or 6 companies throughout the country in order to cover all the areas. So, and that's difficult for foreign companies as well. It's challenging. Okay, I've used a bit more time than I had anticipated, but very well. You said that I could extend a bit.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's being this a very different market, different approach from the European. I thought that it was. I think it's very important that you explain a bit the way they are thinking, the way they are managing, not only, let's say, the bureaucratic administrative way, but the fact how they are reasoning when they are selecting the procurer, the bidders. Because I think this is important to understand first the culture and the approach, and then prepare themselves for investing, because I think first you need some time to invest in preparing your company to approach the market. And then try to bid to take part in the tender, maybe in the first experience, not alone, but with local partners. So
So I hope everything was clear so far.
I think that the best would be if we will just in the time before the next session, that is on the 20th of December, we'll a bit go deeper into the links, so we can just understand if we can maybe search something, understand how does it work, and then we'll come back because I was doing this search in the same time on the bit of the light stages, understanding a bit what they are asking. And I think that this is a good exercise for our partners to a bit go there, understand what they are looking for, and then we are. I was only trying to look also on the local government, on the JETRO, but it doesn't work. It means it's even not opening. I don't know if it's
there's an issue. Yeah, there's an issue with the browser. I saw it as well. I've been working around it. I'll share a link with all of you that you can approach it directly, because there is a workaround. I've sent them a mail ages ago, like it's not working properly, but they haven't reacted. So
this is not I think that's not their priority.
No, exactly. So, but no, can I send you the link with the details on the stage, the stage contract, so you can have you can get an idea and use, I would say, use Google Translate in order to get an idea on what's being said.
Yes, absolutely.
And then in the meantime as well, and I'll structure my talk for next week in such a way that there is more time for Q&A.
Yes.
And
if I will collect some questions in the meantime, I will send them also, so you can.
Yes, and my contact details are listed here.
Great.
And if any of you of the participants have individual questions that they want to pose to me, they are free to contact me.
Absolutely. I will also share this presentation immediately after the webinar, because Lieke has anticipated it to me this morning. So I will send it to all partners, and as well as the recording, as soon as we will manage to save it and to put it in some link available to everybody. So thank you very much. And we are meeting on the 20th of December.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Until next week.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.